I guess like, like, so someone like Ron Paul would be talking about the collapse of the dollar forever, and it hasn't
Yeah.
come. And there's a time, and I would say that, out of, respecting of Ron Paul, I mean, that dude's like a hero to mine. It's like there's a time where you can understand why people be like, he's been saying that forever. But it's okay. He,
Yeah.
he personally has chingles of gold. I'm pretty positive. He's been buying gold forever, probably, right? But like, so
Oh yeah.
he's good. But like, you can tell, like, oh, well, they've been saying that forever, or oh yeah, the crash is coming, and like how we get dismissed a little bit until we're right. But that right comes at a time where they forget about how, I don't know. I'm just trying to, I don't know. I'm trying to
Yeah.
freestyle a
No,
question here, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? We're trying to ask a little
I
bit.
do. I do. I totally understand. And I think that the problem is, in my opinion, and this is going to be unpopular amongst many libertarians, but I think that people like Peter Schiff and Ron Paul, Schiff doesn't really have an excuse because he's been in the investment world for a long time. So I don't understand why he doesn't understand that the dollar reserve status globally is what allows them to spend in such a profligate fashion. Like, the reason that the dollar hasn't died in Peter Schiff's timeline is because I don't think he understands that the military industrial complex's defense of the dollar in terms of what the majority of the global trading world uses. I think over half of all trading worldwide is done in the US dollar. So because of that, there's an immense amount of demand for the US dollar. Like, no matter how much we print, there's a huge amount of demand for it. Now that's changing finally because of the inflation that we're experiencing. But that's the reason he's been wrong. I'll just say it bluntly. Peter Schiff has been wrong about gold because he didn't understand that the US dollar was ultimately going to last a lot longer than he expected because of the US dollar's reserve status, global reserve status. And I think that was the problem, is like, well, he had the proper diagnosis. He was missing a variable that made his timeline completely wrong. And I think that many libertarians suffer from this, particularly because they only listen to guys like Schiff and I think that's part of the reason that I've been successful, with my show, is because I do understand this stuff in a little bit different fashion. I'm not going to say deeper. I don't want to be condescending to him because I think he's a brilliant guy. But I think he just got it wrong because he didn't understand that particular factor. And it's a huge, huge factor. So I think that, like, the most important thing when it comes to libertarian and Austrian economics and our speakers and our role in the political narrative, or the economic narrative for that matter, is that we really reach people when we get our predictions right. Because Ron Paul's warning about real estate in 2003, 4, 5 looked very prescient because it happened, pretty soon after. It was 4 or 5 years later. So I think that, like, if you can have the right analysis and the right timeline, that's the hardest thing to do as a money manager, by the way. So, like, I'm not besmirching anyone for getting the timeline wrong, because it is very, very tough to do. If we could all do it, we'd all be billionaires, right? Like, it's a lot easier said than done. But I think that that's really important, is that, like, when we're warning about these things, we need to be very cautious about being declaratory in our timelines. Like, Schiff has been like, by this, for 15 years, he's like, by next year, this time, gold will be at $3,500 an ounce, or 5,000 or 10,000 an ounce. It's like, you're wrong, dude. You're just wrong. I'm sorry. Like, and you're lying to the people, and you're screwing them over because they're investing in this asset that is ultimately not absorbing the majority of the inflation. In fact, cryptocurrency has been the space that has absorbed much of the inflationary hedging that we've seen. And he also doesn't believe in cryptocurrency, and he thinks it's a Ponzi and it's crap and all that. I think he's wrong about that too. So I don't know. I don't know how you solve that, other than to say that, like, there are people out there in our space like myself, and I don't want to put myself up to, like, brag or anything, but, like, I had a better analysis of this stuff over the past 3 years, and to be honest, over my entire career, than Schiff did. So I don't know how to put it without sounding as if I'm, elevating myself over him, because I really don't want to do that. But I'm just being honest. Like, there are people in our scene that do understand this stuff and have gotten the timelines right. And it's just like, well, then you ought to be listening to them. And you ought to be like, well, I think you should still listen to Schiff. You should just understand. Yeah, he's been saying the same shit for 15 years. Like, be careful. Be careful. His timeline could be off.